My name is Julia. I'm 35 years old, and last Thanksgiving my family decided I wasn't one of them anymore. We were all seated at my mother's long oak dining table, the kind passed down for generations, polished to a fake shine that never quite hid the cracks underneath. The turkey was dry, the wine was cheap, the tension was thick. My sister Vanessa stood up. Her heels clicked against the hardwood as she tapped her wine glass with a spoon like a self-appointed judge. Her voice was calm, too. Calm, which is how I knew something ugly was coming. "We've talked about this," she said, "and we've made a decision. We voted. You're not part of this family anymore." For a moment, no one moved. Then Frank, my stepfather, gave a slow nod. My mother, Margaret, looked away, pretending to be interested in her cranberry sauce. Even Lily, Vanessa's daughter, looked confused. Then came the clapping. First Vanessa, then Frank, then awkwardly my mother. I sat there frozen, as if applause could actually erase me from existence. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg them to reconsider. I just smiled softly. The kind of smile you give when something finally makes sense in the worst way possible. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Then I guess you won't be needing this." I reached under the table and placed a small velvet-wrapped box in the center. It landed with a delicate sound, but the tension it brought was louder than any slam. Vanessa looked down at it, confused, suspicious. "Open it," I said. And that was the moment everything changed. For most of my adult life, I've been the dependable one. Not the favorite, not the loudest, not the kind you brag about, but the one you call when your world quietly falls apart. I work as a child psychologist in Portland, mostly with kids from difficult backgrounds. I spend my days listening, holding space, offering tools to help others heal. Ironically, I never really applied those tools to myself. I'm not flashy. I don't own designer bags or post inspirational quotes online. I live in a modest condo drive in old Subaru and spend my weekends baking sourdough and reading. My sister Vanessa is the opposite. She's an influencer with perfect lighting and curated chaos. She lives in Austin, throws wellness retreats, and speaks in affirmations she barely believes. My mother adores her, always has. Vanessa could break a glass and Margaret would apologize for placing it too close to the edge. I used to think I didn't mind, that I didn't need the spotlight. That being useful was enough. I stayed close emotionally and financially. When Vanessa got pregnant and her boyfriend vanished, I was there. I flew down to Texas for every birthday. I sent gifts, paid for music classes. Lily. Her daughter calls me Aunt Jules and draws me in every picture she makes. For a long time, she was the reason I kept trying. When our mother needed help with hospital bills, I covered the co-pays. When Vanessa's car broke down, I wired money. When the HVAC broke in their rental house, I paid the repairman. They always said thank you, but the words were weightless like confetti. Never followed by repayment. Never followed by change. I rationalized it. They needed me. I was capable. Isn't that what family does? I had no spouse, no kids. They leaned on me because I could take it, or so I thought. In reality, every favor was a brick stacked on my shoulders, and I never realized how heavy it all was until the day the text came. That one moment peeled back the years of silent sacrifice, the imbalance I'd been swallowing like dry pills. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the text, before the hotel bill, before the vote, there were years of being the quiet backbone of a family that never really saw me. And I wore that invisibility like armor until it shattered. It started with a text message, a tiny vibration on my phone that turned into an earthquake. I was in between sessions, sipping coffee from a chipped mug in my office when it lit up. A message from Vanessa. At first glance, it looked normal, maybe even affectionate. Just have to sweet-talk her a little and the wallet opens right up. So predictable. I blinked at it, confused. There was no hello, no context. Just those words. I didn't respond. I didn't have time to. Because within seconds, the message vanished and was replaced with another one. Oops. Wrong person. My stomach dropped. I sat frozen, staring at the screen as if it could somehow offer me a different version of what I had just seen. But it was there. I saw it. And thank God for muscle memory, because my thumb hit the screenshot button almost without thinking. The image was saved before the deletion, a quiet act of self-preservation. That night, I barely slept. The words repeated in my head over and over like a sick lullaby. Sweet talk her. The wallet opens. So predictable. I wasn't her sister. I was a walking ATM. The next morning, I showed the screenshot to a friend of mine, Nora, who also works in mental health. She didn't gasp. She didn't say what I expected her to say. She just looked at me, eyes full of clarity, and said, "This isn't new behavior, Julia. It's just new evidence." I nodded because somewhere deep inside, I already knew that. Nora leaned forward and said something that would change everything. Start keeping records, not because you're planning revenge, but because you need to see it for yourself. You need the truth in black and white. Her words were calm, clinical, but they landed like thunder. That night, I opened an old shoebox I had shoved in the back of my closet. I labeled it quietly in my mind, proof, and without even fully knowing why, I began to gather. Bank transfers, emails, Venmo screenshots, credit card statements. I dug through years of digital receipts and printed them out one by one. I didn't know where it would lead. I only knew that I couldn't continue living in a version of reality that wasn't mine. The text was a crack in the dam. The proof was the flood. And for the first time in years, I stopped apologizing for needing to breathe. I thought I had been keeping track mentally like most people do when they help out family. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Nothing serious, nothing worth formalizing. But once I started printing the receipts, the true scale of it all came into focus, and it made my breath catch. I wasn't just generous. I was being drained. The shoebox filled up faster than I expected. There were wire transfers from 5 years ago when Vanessa called crying that her rent check had bounced. I had covered the shortfall without a second thought. A month later, she posted pictures of a spa weekend with champagne brunches and luxury robes. There were checks I had sent directly to the daycare where Lily went under the impression that Vanessa had already paid her part and just needed a little bridge money. Turns out, I was the only one paying. I found an old email chain with my mother about a dental surgery she couldn't afford, and there was the PayPal receipt I had sent minutes later without hesitation. I covered airline tickets for Vanessa and Lily to come visit during Christmas one year, and they canceled last minute. Non-refundable. I even found receipts from when I booked a moving truck for Vanessa when she said she had no one else to help. That same week, she posted selfies with her best friend at a beach house. Every page I printed made my stomach churn. Some of the dates lined up with moments in my life where I had been silently struggling too, like when my own car needed repairs and I chose to take the bus for 2 weeks so I could still afford to send Lily a birthday gift. I realized that while I had been constantly adjusting my own life to make room for theirs, no one had ever even asked me if I was okay. I added up the totals. 1 sheet of paper, a simple spreadsheet. Date, amount, recipient, and reason. It was clinical. Cold. But it told a story more brutally honest than any conversation we had ever had. $93,740. That was the number staring back at me. I whispered it aloud, half hoping it would sound less staggering. It didn't. I didn't include the time, the emotional labor, the missed opportunities. I didn't tally up the birthday parties I missed with friends, the vacations I postponed, or the savings I should have built. I only listed money, and it was already too much. There was something sobering about seeing it laid out that way. No more pretending, no more gray areas. I kept printing. I added emails from Vanessa asking for help phrased just right to make me feel responsible. I added screenshots of social media posts made the same day she claimed to be broke. I didn't do it to build a case, not at first. I did it because I needed to believe myself. Years of being gaslit by gratitude made me question my own generosity, but paper doesn't lie, and the paper was piling up. I slipped every piece into a folder neatly organized. I wrote labels. I made tabs. It was like I was documenting a life I hadn't realized I was living, one where I wasn't a sister. I was a bank. And the thing that hurt the most was realizing that they didn't even see me as being taken advantage of. They saw me as being useful, quiet, predictable, just like Vanessa had texted. So predictable. The folder was heavy in my hands, heavier than the number, heavier than the years. But for the first time, it didn't feel like weight. It felt like truth. And truth has a way of shifting everything. I wasn't looking for anything new when I found the hotel charge. I thought I had already collected enough more than enough, but curiosity or maybe instinct kept me going. I was scrolling through an old credit card statement from 2 years back and a charge caught my eye. It was labeled Palm Springs Serenity Resort. Vanessa had called me in a panic that month, saying she had a last-minute opportunity to attend a wellness retreat that could expand her business. She told me the spot had opened unexpectedly, that she only had a few hours to book it, and her bank account was locked due to some fraud investigation. She sounded frantic. I remembered the call well because I had been in the middle of a difficult client session and stepped out to answer her. She begged me to book the resort for her using my card, promising to pay me back within the week. I agreed, of course. At the time, it didn't feel like a big ask. The charge had seemed steep but not insane, just under $1,500 for what she described as a professional development opportunity. But something about that entry on the statement made me pause now. It wasn't the price. It was the memory of how quickly she had brushed it off afterward. She never mentioned the retreat again. There were no photos, no stories, no new clients that followed, so I called the resort. My voice was steady, polite. I told them I was reviewing a past charge on my credit card and asked if I could get a breakdown of the folio. The woman on the phone was cheerful and helpful, completely unaware of the emotional detonation she was about to hand me. She listed the standard room charges, then the upgrades: couples massage, champagne dinner, in-room brunch, and then she said it. Guest number 2 was Jessie Taylor. I didn't speak for a few seconds. Jessie Taylor. The name meant nothing to me. Vanessa had never mentioned anyone named Jessie, male or female. The reservation had been for 2 adults, 1 suite. Everything inside me went cold. I asked the woman to email me a copy of the folio. She did, and I printed it immediately. It went straight into the folder. There was nothing illegal about it, nothing criminal, but it was deceitful. And it was mine. My card. My money. Used for something I had been lied to about. The wellness retreat was a romantic getaway. I had funded a weekend of luxury for a stranger while canceling my own plans that month because I couldn't afford both. I remembered eating frozen meals and skipping my usual bookstore trip to stay on budget. I remembered telling myself that sacrifices are what family makes, that it's okay to wait. But now I knew the truth. I had waited long enough. That hotel receipt wasn't just another entry. It was the turning point. Because suddenly it wasn't about money. It was about disrespect, about betrayal. It was about realizing that even when they didn't need to lie, they still did. That night, I sat on my couch with the folder in my lap. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at the stack of paper and felt something quiet and final settle into my bones. The blind loyalty was over. It was time to act. After I added the hotel receipt to the folder, there was no more hesitation. I had reached the point where clarity replaced confusion. The question was no longer why they treated me this way. It was how I had let it go on for so long. I made an appointment with a lawyer the following week. Her office was in a quiet brick building near the edge of downtown, filled with the kind of calm that felt deliberate. I liked her instantly. She was sharp, direct, and didn't flinch when I laid the folder on her desk. I explained everything without embellishment. She flipped through the documents with practiced eyes and nodded slowly. When I showed her the text message from Vanessa, her mouth tightened. She didn't ask why I hadn't done this sooner. She just looked at me and said, this was never about helping them. It was about them using your love as leverage. That sentence stayed with me. We talked about what I needed to do to untangle myself. She asked who had power of attorney, who I was listed as an emergency contact for whose name I might still be linked to on medical forms, school contacts, bank accounts. I was surprised by how many invisible threads still connected me to them. She helped me draft letters revoking power of attorney. We filed paperwork to remove my name from anything legally binding. She walked me through the process of creating new boundaries that weren't just emotional, but official. It felt strange to need a lawyer to separate myself from people who shared my blood, but there was also something deeply affirming about it. I wasn't just stepping away. I was making it impossible for them to keep pulling me back in. I went home that evening and printed copies of everything the lawyer had sent. I slipped them into the folder. It felt complete now. Not just evidence, but closure. The final layer. I placed it gently into a small velvet-wrapped gift box, one that looked almost festive. I didn't know exactly when I would deliver it, but I knew it would be soon. Thanksgiving was approaching. My mother had texted a vague invitation, one that felt more like a formality than a desire for connection. I hadn't responded yet. But the moment I saw her name pop up on my screen, I knew. That would be the day. That would be the room. That would be the last time I sat at their table. And this time, I wouldn't come empty-handed. Thanksgiving arrived with gray skies and a chill that felt more internal than seasonal. I dressed with intention, not for beauty or attention, but for clarity. Dark jeans, a black sweater, boots I could walk away in without a backward glance. I packed the box carefully and placed it in the passenger seat of my car. The drive to my mother's house took 40 minutes, every mile stretching with memory. I passed the gas station where Vanessa once left me waiting after promising to pick me up. I passed the grocery store where I had stood in line buying birthday supplies for Lily while they were out of town on a girls' weekend I hadn't been invited to. I arrived 10 minutes early and sat in the car for a while. The folder, now boxed and wrapped in soft fabric, sat like a weight beside me, not heavy with dread, heavy with decision. I took a breath, checked my face in the rearview mirror, and stepped out. The house looked the same. The porch light flickered, the welcome mat was worn, but nothing about it felt welcoming anymore. Inside, the voices were loud laughter echoing from the kitchen. Vanessa greeted me with a wide smile that didn't touch her eyes. "There you are," she said, as if I were late. My mother hugged me briefly, already turning back to her casserole. Frank offered a nod from the armchair, a beer in hand. Lily ran up and hugged me tight, and for a moment, just a moment, my resolve trembled. Then I saw the place settings. 10 seats. One of them noticeably set apart slightly at the corner like an afterthought. Mine. Vanessa called everyone to the table, raising her glass. Her tone shifted. Serious. Calculated. She tapped the glass with her spoon, the sound sharp and commanding. "We've had some conversations," she began, looking not at me but at everyone else. "And we've made a decision." She paused, soaking in the attention. "Julia, we voted. You're not part of this family anymore." Silence followed. Not shock, just a hollow, uncomfortable silence. Frank nodded. My mother looked at her plate. Even Sweet Lily looked around as if trying to understand what had just happened. And then Vanessa started clapping. A slow, deliberate applause. Frank joined in. Then my mother, her hands tentative, barely making contact. I felt the sting of humiliation rise, but didn't let it surface. I didn't cry. I didn't lash out. Instead, I smiled. That small, closed-lip smile that comes when something absurd finally becomes clear. "Then I guess you won't be needing this," I said, and placed the box in the center of the table. It landed softly but drew all attention. Vanessa stared at it. Her confidence wavered. "Open it," I said. "Go ahead." She hesitated, then reached for the lid and pulled it back. Inside was the folder. She opened it. Page 1, the spreadsheet, $93,740. Itemized, dated, labeled. Her face went blank. She flipped the next page. Screenshots. The text message. "Just have to sweet talk her." The wallet opens right up. So predictable. The room was still. Then came the hotel folio. The words Palm Springs Serenity Resort sat at the top, bold and clear. Underneath the details, couples massage, in-room brunch, Jesse Taylor. Vanessa's hands trembled. My mother finally looked up. "What is this?" she asked, her voice already cracking. "Just records," I said. Since apparently I was no longer family, I thought I'd return what I had left. The truth. The moment hung in the air like fog, thick and stifling. Vanessa's hands were still resting on the folder, but she wasn't turning pages anymore. She just stared, unmoving, her eyes darting back and forth between the sheets, like maybe they'd rearrange themselves if she blinked hard enough. Frank leaned forward, his beer, forgotten eyes narrowing at the page in front of her. "What the hell is this?" he asked, not loud but sharp. Vanessa didn't answer. She looked stunned, like a script had vanished from her hand mid-performance. My mother reached out, took a page, and began scanning the spreadsheet. She looked for a moment like she might argue, might deny, might rationalize, but the numbers were cold, unforgiving, and undeniable. "Is this true?" she asked softly, but no one answered her. Then came the next part, the page that stopped even Frank cold. The hotel bill, Palm Springs Serenity Resort, 2 adults, champagne service. Guest Jesse Taylor. Frank turned to Vanessa and something dark passed over his face. "Who the hell is Jesse?" he asked. The room froze. Vanessa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked like a child caught lying and too deep in to back out. "Julia, what are you trying to do here?" My mother snapped suddenly, her tone brittle. "Are you trying to destroy this family?" I looked at her and shook my head, not with anger, but with something quieter, more final. "I'm not destroying anything I said. I'm just done pretending this is normal, pretending I'm not being used, pretending that love should come with receipts." I stood up, pushed my chair back slowly. Vanessa was still frozen, her fingers clenched around the edge of the folder like she thought she could hold the truth in place by force. Frank leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. My mother's eyes filled with something fear, regret, maybe even understanding, but she didn't speak again. "You said I wasn't family," I reminded them. "You voted. So, this is my response. I revoke power of attorney. I remove myself as emergency contact. I'm no longer the one you call when things fall apart. I've notified my bank. My will has been updated. The lawyer has all the forms. This is legal, final, and binding." Vanessa flinched as if the word lawyer was a slap. Lily looked at me wide-eyed, clearly too young to understand all the words, but old enough to feel the shift in the room. "Sweetheart," I whispered and met her gaze with all the love I had left. "This isn't about you. None of this is your fault." Her lip trembled. Vanessa finally found her voice. "You're making a scene," she hissed like a whisper through clenched teeth. "You're ruining Thanksgiving." I tilted my head and studied her. "No," I said, softly. "I'm just turning on the lights. It was already broken. You just didn't want anyone to see it." I gathered my coat. No shouting, no tears. Just a hollow, clear silence that filled every corner of the room. I had thought it would be harder, that walking away would tear me in two, but the only thing I felt was relief. I turned toward the door. No one stopped me. Not Frank. Not Margaret. Not even Vanessa. Only Lily whispered my name, and that nearly undid me. But I kept walking. I stepped out into the cold afternoon air, the door shutting behind me with a soft click that echoed louder than any slam. I walked to my car, placed the empty box in the passenger seat, and drove. I didn't know where I was going, not really. I only knew I wasn't going back. Not ever. I thought the worst part was over when I left the house, but the aftermath had its own kind of sting. The next morning, my phone lit up with messages. Not from Vanessa, not from my mother, from Frank. The first one was short. "I need to talk to you." Then another, about Jesse. I didn't reply. I didn't owe him anything, and I certainly wasn't going to play messenger in whatever storm was brewing behind their doors. But curiosity, that old ghost, stirred anyway. Later that day, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but when I played it back, the voice was unmistakable. Frank. His voice was low, deliberate. "I just want you to know," he said, "I had no idea about Jesse. None. I don't know who he is, but I know what this means. And if it's what I think, then you've done me a favor." That was all he said. No apology. No anger. Just that cold, clipped confession. I sat with it for a long time. Jesse had been more than a guest on a hotel bill. He was a fracture line through their marriage. A truth they'd all ignored or hidden. Vanessa had brought it into the light, and I had been the one holding the flashlight. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt tired, worn down to the bone. But in that exhaustion, there was a strange kind of peace. Let them unravel. Let the truth settle where it needed to. I was no longer part of the equation. Later that evening, I received one more text, this one from Vanessa. It was only 3 words. "You were right." I didn't reply. What was there left to say? I didn't celebrate what happened. I didn't toast to freedom or post cryptic quotes online about letting go. I just kept moving forward one small step at a time. I changed my phone number a week later. Quietly, no announcement. I updated my emergency contact forms at work and my doctor's office. I removed Margaret's name from everything, added Nora instead. I closed the joint savings account my mother once insisted we keep in case of family emergencies. I donated the clothes Vanessa had left at my place years ago and never picked up. Each act was tiny but deliberate, a dismantling of the structure they had built around me brick by dependent brick. I didn't block them on social media. I simply stopped looking. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't read their emails. I let the silence do the talking. The thing no one tells you about walking away is how still the world becomes. No more chaos. No more fake gratitude. Just quiet. At first, it's unbearable. Then it's peace. And that peace, slow and fragile, became my new home. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped defending choices that had never been understood. I started sleeping better. I started breathing deeper. I started for the first time in years to belong to myself. 6 months passed and life reshaped itself in quieter ways than I expected. I moved to Santa Fe, a city I had visited once on a whim and never forgotten. The air was different there, dry and clean, as if it hadn't been burdened with anyone's expectations. I found a small studio apartment above a bookstore just big enough for me and my quiet. The landlord let me paint the walls any color I wanted, so I chose a soft shade of sage green. It made the place feel calm, like a breath I didn't have to hold. I joined a pottery class. My hands, once used to typing and sorting and emailing and giving now shaped clay into imperfect bowls and cups. I made friends slowly, the kind you meet over shared silence and mutual understanding. On Fridays, I met Nora for dinner over video chat. We talked about work recipes books and the absurdity of healing. I got a cat. I named her Fig. She sits by the window and watches the world without needing to be a part of it, and sometimes I think we understand each other. I still thought about Lily. Sometimes I saw a girl her age laughing in a grocery store or skipping on the sidewalk, and a sharp ache would settle in my chest. I didn't try to make contact. That decision hurt, but it held. I had chosen peace, and peace doesn't grow where chaos is watered. I started a new journal. The first page read, "This life is mine now." And every day I wrote something small I was grateful for. A warm cup of tea, an unbroken morning, a moment of stillness without fear. Some mornings I still wake up expecting a message, a demand disguised as a question, a crisis that somehow needs me to fix it. Old patterns are hard to break, even when the people who built them are no longer around. But then I remember the folder, the drive to that house, the way the box felt in my hands when I placed it on the table. I remember the silence that followed the stunned faces, the weight that lifted. I am not angry anymore. I am not even sad. What I feel now is something simpler and harder to define. Maybe it's acceptance. Maybe it's the space where grief used to live, and now only echoes remain. There is something powerful about letting go without slamming the door. Something honest about choosing yourself quietly. I used to believe that family was sacred, untouchable, something that could not be questioned. But now I understand that family is not made by blood. It is made by behavior, by respect, by reciprocity. And when those things disappear, what remains is just a story we tell ourselves to survive. I don't tell that story anymore. I live a different one now. One where my name is enough. One where I am not the villain for refusing to be used. One where peace is not a luxury but a choice. This morning I drank coffee from a mug I made myself. It's misshapen and chipped at the base, but it fits my hands perfectly. It has no slogan, no title, just a single word etched in the clay. Julia. Not daughter, not sister, not Aunt Jules, just me. And maybe that's all I ever needed to be. Have you ever had to make a hard choice to protect your peace? Even if it meant walking away from people you loved, I'd like to hear your story.